Hello, my name is Rachel Howelkoff, and I will be discussing gender inequality and injustice in athletics. Starting with some history of women's sports dating back all the way to the 1900s. The 1900s Olympics had 22 female athletes compete in only women-based sports such as tennis and lawn golf. The 1920s started to see increase in female athletics, with the Women's Olympics in Paris having different events for females that were more intense than tennis and lawn golf. But due to this, the Olympics decided to prohibit this event up until 1960. In the 1940s, female athletes got their own sports league known as the All-American Girls Professional Basketball League. During this time, through the 1900s, there was some acts that were passed. So in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, and this allows all equality for female and male professional sports. And then in 1970, the Title IX of the Education Act was passed. This is very prevalent in college athletes and nowadays in college budgets, but 2% of the college athletic budgets during this time were only for female athletes. Now where we are it definitely has come a long way, but there is still a lot of progress for women athletes in sports. So throughout the 200s, female athletes decided to fight for their rights while playing professional sports, especially during with the wage gap and how they were treated through these professional sports. So in 2017, the U.S. women's national hockey team threatened to not participate in the World Championship, which would be huge for female sports to boycott and stand up for what they believe in. In 2018, the World Surf League, both male and females, will now receive equal prize money no matter at the end of the championship. No matter if you're a male or female, you're still receiving the same amount of money. In 2020, the WNBA had come to an agreement for better pay, benefits, and accommodations, and this was a really big turn of events for female sports as we continue to make leeway and continue to progress. And the most recent date in female sports in 2023, the Professional Women's Hockey League has started their first inaugural season. Now on this slide, I just wanted to show some differences for the pay gap between male and female professional sports. Not going to go through it all, but some big ones that do stand out to me is in this first one with the dollar signs. It says U.S. men's teams pay for losing in the first round of the World Cup. They earn $8 million. U.S. women's team pay for winning the whole entire World Cup. They only were paid out $2 million. And you could see the differences in the World Cup and gender pay on this last one over to the side between men's and women's World Cup. It's an extraordinary difference of the winner's money. And then at the top, between those four sports, tennis probably has the closest gap between wages, but still pretty extreme of all the other sports. Some big things that do the reason why that males are paid more during these sports, and it says on this Women in Sports graphic that more like advocating for women's rights, watching them on TV, and attending women's sporting events would be helpful and increase that wage. Some implications for mental health has definitely seen an increase in college athletes starting at from freshman year all the way up to senior year. Especially with the pandemic that recently happened, they've had seen an increase in mental health in student athletes. With the demands of performing the best to your ability in the classroom and having to put that aside to perform in a sport can be mentally draining for college athletes. Just making sure that you complete your grades and you get good grades to continue to play the sport that you want to play, but having to put that aside once you step into the arena or the ice rink, and making sure you perform your best to your ability to obtain your spot and keep your spot. And the NCAA which is the National Collegiate Athletic Association, completed a study in 2020 with over 9,800 student athletes. And they were asked a question: if you feel comfortable seeking mental health services on campus, and less than half of males and females either agreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. And then within professional athletes, 35% are dealing with mental health, ranging from eating disorders to anxiety. This is just a little statistic that I wanted to point out for college athletes, that approximately 30% of women and 25% of men who are student athletes report having anxiety, and only 10% of college athletes with known mental health conditions seek care from a mental health professional. This just goes to show that the mental health in college athletes is high, but only not even half are receiving the treatment that they need. This is just another quote that I wanted to bring up of a professional basketball player. And he said, for 29 years, I thought about mental health as someone else's problem, thinking that you could see someone else going through it, but you would never think that it's yourself. Now, just going into cultural diversity and identity intersect, this little graph just goes into racial diversity in U.S. professional sports. This was back in 2020 and some for 2019. Just a little graph of the race of players in these professional sporting events, as you could see. And some are predominantly African American, such as NBA. And then you look at the MLB, and it's predominantly white. Continuing on from that, this next graph goes into players of color along with head coaches of color, so you can see the difference between each sport and the player of color and the percentage of head coaches of color in that sport. And this just can date back into mental health. If a person of color maybe feels more comfortable speaking with another person of color, like for the National Football League, there's only 74%. There's 74% players of color, but only 13% of head coaches with color. And moving forward on to that, out of all female athletes, 26% of female athletes are our color, and 75% of female athletic opportunities are received by white females. And then going into some another statistic, 70% of male athletes and 30% of female athletes have admitted to using homophobic slurs while playing a sport. Now going into my advocacy plan, I think this might be a little extreme, but I think it would be beneficial for athletes and female athletes especially to feel that they know that they have somebody to talk to through their mental health. As being somebody who did play college sport and not really feeling like the mental health services were very open to us and prominent to us, I think made a huge effect on if you're willing to talk to somebody or not. So starting with college and universities, I think it would be beneficial to have a mental health facility on campus for athletes. Sometimes as an athlete, they feel that they want to be their best that they can be, and when playing this sport, they don't want to see anyone else to see them to be shut down. So I think maybe a private area for somewhere for them to go talk to somebody would definitely be beneficial and could increase their performance. And then I think having a dual athletic trainer and a mental health professional that does go on road trips in case something does happen would be beneficial. So, for example, say this athlete doesn't feel like they played their best game and now they're having anxiety, they're having these thoughts. They know that they could have someone trusted that can remain confidential when going and talking to these people. So I think it would be beneficial to have someone with the team that's able to travel on road trips or just be around the team just to see what a day-to-day would be for them. And then this can carry over into professional athletes with at practices, at training, at workouts, just having a mental health professional on site at all times could decrease the mental health in athletics. Some ethical considerations that I thought of respecting clients' rights. So for multicultural and diversity considerations, just maintaining that awareness and sensitivity of cultural meanings and confidentiality and privacy when working with all clients would definitely be very beneficial. The next one, use of public social media. Feel around these days, everything's up and posted on social media, so just making sure to avoid disclosing any confidentiality through public social media, so posting stuff that could affect your clients' whereabouts. And then the last one, confidentiality and advocacy. I think it would be definitely beneficial with a mental health professional to be there and advocate for these athletes, but I also think confidentiality can come into play, and having some barriers to that could definitely affect these athletes. Some challenges that I think that can affect my advocacy plan is with having somebody around 24/7. They might feel they're forced into talking to somebody when they really don't need to. Maybe it's just a minor issue, but now they feel that they're forced into this. Next, with having the mental health professional breaching confidentiality, maybe you talk about another player or a coach, but you also meet with that player or said coach, could affect their playing time, could affect how everyone else sees them. So it could potentially just be a factor into if they would feel comfortable sharing all that information. And then the relationship between the mental health professional and coaching staff can cause issues with the athlete's playing time, as I said. Now, lastly, my summary. Between female and male athletes, as seen, there is a huge difference and lack of resources and pay. So trying to even this gap out has been going on for many years, as we've seen. It's been dating back all the way to the 1900s. These female athletes continue to hear the same excuses of why the difference between the two is so large. And as female athletes continue to fight for their rights within the sports world, mental health will continue to be a prominent issue surrounding these athletes, as the pressure of performance and the fight to win will always remain. So promoting and showing athletes different resources around them in the community, on campus, and just reminding them that it's okay to not be okay. And lastly, my resources. Thanks for watching.